Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to A Place in the Sun Florida Masterclass. Welcome back if you've just watched our session on getting a mortgage in Florida. I hope it was useful. We're now moving down the process a bit, and we're going to look at how to actually buy and the people you need to help you buy, well, in particular a realtor, and how you work with realtors, because there is a difference between buying and using an estate agent in the UK. And we're very lucky to have two highly respected and experienced realtors who are both based in Florida, live on the line now, who are going to talk us through everything we need to know, all the key points, but also answer any questions you have as well. So if you do have any questions throughout, please use the Q&A function on your Zoom desktop. I'll then pick up the questions and filter them to the two panelists. My name is Richard Way. I'm an international property journalist, and I've been writing about property in Florida for a number of years. I've been out there as well, and in fact I've been out there and hosted by Patricia, who is one of our panelists today. What I will do is just let each of them introduce themselves quickly and say a bit about their own personal experience as a realtor, and how long they've been there, and anything else interesting. So Pat, we'll start with you. Hello, Pat.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I just had a technical hitch, Richard, so I did not hear the last 30 to 60 seconds of what you said. Sorry.
That's fine. I just want you to tell everyone about yourself and your experience and how you ended up in Florida, so people have know a bit more about you.
That's easy. Okay, well, as Richard says, I've lived here a while. I moved here in 1997. I live in Sarasota on the west coast of Florida, which is about an hour south of Tampa. Love it here. In 2004, I got my real estate license. And since then, I've been working primarily with international buyers and sellers, so very much focused on that specialty area. I work with Coldwell Banker Realty. We have our own team. Coldwell Banker are the largest and oldest real estate company in the state of Florida. So we have branches everywhere, but I work primarily on the West Coast.
Great. And you come across and do exhibitions, don't you, when you can? I mean, I've met you at A Place in the Sun.
Yeah, we've been...
The actual live exhibitions of the year, I think, since they started almost, probably.
I think we just missed the first one, Richard. We weren't quite sure, so we visited the first one and as visitors and then exhibited ever since. So I'm really missing that this past year because it's a great opportunity to get together with people face to face. So I'm pleased to be here.
Great, thanks very much. So from Sarasota, we're now going to head towards the bright lights of Orlando, where John Penny is there. John, tell us about yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is John Penny. I'm with J.C. Penny Realty. We're based in Kissimmee. I live in Davenport. I've lived in Florida since 1972, so I've been here quite a while. I've got a funny accent compared to everybody else, but that's all right. We primarily work with vacationers or second homeowners who are looking to buy properties to either rent them out and make some money and offset some of the expenses, or to buy it as a second home. We call them lock and leaves, where they just lock them up, leave them, and come and use them, and family use them whenever they want. We have a new office we opened about a year and a half, 2 years ago over in Melbourne on the East Coast, aside from Pat, just because we found some people who are looking to kind of expand and get out of the Disney area and maybe, spend some time on the East Coast. We love what we do. The same with Pat. I mean, we miss coming over to the exhibitions. We love seeing all of our past and future clients and customers and friends. Definitely wish we were there now, that's for sure.
Thanks, John. But from what I'm hearing from chatting to you previously, there's still a lot of interest, though, from the UK market, whether it's online or virtually like this, but you're still busy, is that right?
Extremely busy. We're having one of the better years we've had in quite some time, even in this current situation. We know that's not long for the world. Hopefully it'll be done and over, but the desire for being in Florida and having a property in Florida has not waned at all. If anything, it just made it a little bit stronger.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, let's look at some of the nitty gritty now. The realtor is probably the most important person you're going to need when you buy a property in Florida or anywhere in the States. You call them realtors. It's not a word we use in the UK, and there's a reason, because you're different. Your roles are different. You're more collaborative. You're more involved in the process. You're regulated. So yeah, Pat, just talk us through the fundamental part of what you do when you help clients, and how it compares to in the UK. And would you always advise someone to only use a registered realtor or realty brokerage?
Okay, well, first of all, we do have estate agents in Florida. Not all estate agents here are realtors, but they are all licensed. So we all have to be licensed by the state. To be a realtor, you have to be a member of the National Association of Realtors, and that gives us some additional obligations beyond our licensing requirements. We have a very extensive code of ethics. So anyone who is a realtor, and it's about 92% of all agents in the state, but anyone who is a realtor is bound by a very strict code of ethics. So we are very much legislated how we have to work with a buyer, represent that buyer's interests in the transaction, but we do a lot more than a regular estate agent would do in the UK. So we are basically responsible for helping you locate the property, show you the property, but that's really where the similarity with the UK agent ends. Once you find a house, we help you research really what the value of that home is, so we can make an educated offer, a realistic offer to purchase. And part of that offer process, we actually draw up a contract. We work in Florida with 2 standard contracts. You don't need an attorney to do this. So John or I will take a blank contract and we'll fill in the blanks in terms of price and other terms of sale. And we present that offer, as we call it, to the seller's agent, and that we negotiate based on that. And then once the seller signs it, you're actually under contract. So we do all of the contract preparation. Once we're under contract, we do a lot of other things too. So we coordinate surveys, valuations, home inspections, which can be extensive. We work with people like Ben to manage the mortgage process and really just make sure nothing slips through the cracks, that everything is taken care of. All roads lead to us. So the buck actually stops here once you've found that house to purchase.
So it sounds almost like that some of the things you do, you would expect a lawyer almost to do in another country. I mean, I know you're not legally exposed maybe, but just in terms of the roles and researching a property.
Yeah, a lot of the things your solicitor would do in England in terms of negotiating terms to the contract, obviously drawing up the contract, liaising with the bank and the mortgage. We take care of a lot of those things. We're not attorneys, so there's a definite line that we can't cross. But the key thing from the listener's point of view is when you're working with a licensed agent in Florida, the way we operate is very much mandated in terms of consumer protection.
Right.
So there are certain things, you know, we have to be truthful, we have to manage your money honestly, all of those things, that's the law. So you can rest assured there's some very high level of consumer protection here.
And just quickly, I'm right in saying you're even assessed as well, is that right? You have to sit revision exams or whatever you call them.
Yeah, we have the opportunity to go back to school on a regular basis. So to get our license, it's about a 7 days class. It's quite intensive. We take an exam in order to get the license initially. But really, the license just gives you the basics. So a good agent is going to be a lifelong learner because there's always something new. There's always a little quirk happening in the market. And then mandatory, we have to do 14 hours of continuing education and pass an exam at the end of it every 2 years. So that's the absolute minimum. I know myself and agents in my team, we're spending 20, 30, sometimes 40 hours in the classroom. That's what you actually need to stay on top of your game every year.
Okay, well, that's obviously reassuring for buyers. and sellers. Because my next question to you, John, realtors, as a buyer, you will appoint, or you can appoint a realtor to represent you as a buyer, but it works the other way as well. As a seller, they'll have a realtor who's representing them. So how does that work? I mean, could the same realtor be represent a buyer and a seller? And on top of that, how do fees work with yourselves?
Okay, the technical question is yes, a seller's agent can represent a buyer and a seller. The problem is kind of what Pat was talking about is if you have a duty to your client or your seller to get them the highest price, to negotiate the best terms on the seller's behalf. So if you as a buyer are driving down the street or see a sign on, you know, or an advert online, and you say, I want to call that agent who's working for the seller, who do you think is whose values or interests are going to be who's it going to be working for?
Yeah.
So what we try to do is in our office, we actually have a group of agents who are buyer's agents and a group who are seller's agents. And what we do is we try to keep an arm's length between them. I, as the broker, so you've got what Pat was alluding to is you have a licensed sales associate, that's your entry level. Then you have a realtor who has gone through additional schooling, training, code of ethics. Then you're going to have either a broker associate or a broker who actually runs an office. So as a broker, we are allowed to do what's called transaction broker. So we can have an agent in our office working for the buyer and one working for the seller, and the two don't talk to each other. They don't discuss things. So the buyer's agent will be working on behalf. Where we found the issue is on a seller's agent, if he is working for the seller, he can't advise the buyer on what price he should offer on any of those type of terms, because then he would be doing a disservice to a seller. So
Yeah.
That's why we try to keep it separate. I think, what'd you say your next question is how commissions or fees?
Yeah, who pays your fees? How do you get paid?
An estate agent works for the seller and they get paid by the seller. Here we have a buyer's agent, and our system is a little bit different than most because the seller offers a compensation to the listing brokerage, and then they take that commission and split it in half between the buyer's agency and the seller's agency. Okay. So we get to work on the buyer's behalf, and the buyers, it doesn't cost them anything to do it. So they're getting representation. And Pat was just alluding to just some of the things. I mean, when you start thinking about, we're almost like a concierge. You know, we pick people up from the airport, we take them and, you know, find them lodging or whatever. And when they fly over, we go and tour all the properties, go out to dinner. I mean, the list goes on. And then once you do get under contract, then it is going through doing the home inspections and everything, getting the bank accounts open, meeting with property managers. So we really do walk you from A to Z all the way through it to make sure that no steps are missed. So there's a lot of work goes into it, and it doesn't cost the buyer anything for us to do that.
Sounds good to me. Thanks. So as a buyer coming to Florida, it's usual that you will appoint one realtor, such as yourselves, to find you a property and help you find a property. You'll talk to them, you'll tell them exactly what you're looking for. And then they'll obviously use their local knowledge and their contacts. But there's also this thing called the multiple listing system, Pat, which does obviously helps you find properties. Just explain what that is and why it means, you know, you really do only need one realtor to look for you. Yeah.
Sure. Well, the multiple listing system is basically, if you think about it as a big database or a repository, and every house or condo that's offered for sale is entered into that system by the listing agent. And the data from the MLS is the data that feeds through to Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com and all of the other websites that people can search for real estate on. So they all come from that one source, basically. That's why you see the same house, no matter you look on Zillow or Realtor.com, you see the same listings. Mm-hmm. So listings is one side of it. And then as John alluded to, the other side of the MLS is that that's basically what allows us to share commissions, because as well as being listed in there, there is an offer to share commission that's associated with that listing. So that's why the buyer gets free service. But the interesting thing about the MLS concept is, you know, in the UK, when you want to buy a house, you go from estate agent to estate agent, you kind of work your way down the high street and you have to register with everybody because all they're doing is selling their own listings. Well, this is really a paradigm shift. So we have one place to look for listings and everybody has access to those listings. So if you go into whichever agent you work with, they all see the same listings. We all have the ability to pull up background information on the listing. We have a lot of data at our disposal. We all have electronic keys that let us get into homes. So as long as we make an appointment ahead of time, we don't have to run around finding keys. The listing agent doesn't have to meet us there. So really, from the buyer's perspective, it's very time efficient. It's very easy to work with just one person. And the key is really to find the person who's going to work best for you. So find the person who knows the area, who has experience working with British buyers or sellers, who focuses on that international aspect of business, because it is much more complex. It is not the same as working with a US buyer. There's a lot more things that we need to be aware of. And a good agent also will know about new construction opportunities. So part of my job is to keep up to date with the builders and what they're doing, so I can compare resale properties that might be listed in MLS with new build opportunities that are around in the market too.
Okay, actually that ties in nicely. There's a question that's coming from Mike Grimmett, and he says, do you have access to new build? He's specifically looking for a 3-4 bedroom home with a pool that he doesn't want to rent out. He's actually looking off the beaten track areas, he says. I'm guessing he means places that haven't been discovered, if you like, so much. And he mentions our price is a lot different to Cape Coral.
Okay. So yes, off the beaten track is good, Mike, because usually you get a lot better deal. The land itself, the cost of construction is very similar, but the land itself is much cheaper as you get away from the major centers of population, obviously. Cape Coral is a good example of that. So many years ago, 10 years ago, when we had our real recession in the property market, probably actually 14 years ago now when it started, Cape Coral was like ground zero for foreclosures in our area on the West Coast. So things there were really, really inexpensive. And of course, that's changed now because as people invested in the area moved up and it's not as cheap as it used to be. But if you go inland from Cape Coral, then you get some really good deals. So depending how far, basically how far you are away from the coast, will dictate how much the land costs. The closer you get to the water, the more expensive the land. And the more expensive it is to construct because we need different standards of construction. Did that answer your question, Mike? Was there another question at the beginning of that, Richard?
That's it. No, the first bit what I asked you was, do you have access to new build? And you said you do. So
right.
You're in touch with developers and I imagine
all the
John
time.
to say them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just still with you, Pat, only because the questions have come in this way. Lucy Morton says, you work on the West Coast. Are you familiar with, I don't know these places, but Crystal River, Inverness and surrounding areas?
Yes, Crystal River, Inverness is north of Tampa. It's kind of the Newport Richey area, again, a coastal area. Crystal River is beautiful. It's like a little sleepy town, not like the bigger towns of Sarasota and Clearwater, but very, very nice, relaxed lifestyle there. I don't personally work there. It's too far from my area, but I work with a number of ladies in the area who are of like minds with us and like experience for international people. So I can certainly make an introduction there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So moving on in the actual buying process, as a buyer, you will have spoken to someone like Pat and John and appointed them, and they will then present you with options, possibilities. Obviously, you're in the UK, you're in the US. Most people, the next step is to come out there to Florida and do a visit, a viewing trip, spend a week or whatever, looking at the different options. John, just talk us through how your typical clients will do that and the sort of interaction you have throughout the process. How long are most trips? How many properties would people expect to see in one trip or even one day? How does it work?
Believe it or not, we actually are, we've been doing this for a long time, so we get pretty good at figuring out what is the best use of time. We don't want to waste your time. We know that time is precious, and when you get here, it'd be nice to also have some time to vacation with the family if that's what you're doing when you're coming over. So we do a lot of pre-prep work. We'll have multiple conversations and video meetings and looking at different type of properties and weeding out, kind of getting the feel for what you like and what you don't like. So we'll do a lot of work before you even arrive and getting it to, we're talking about properties, getting it down to what we call a short list. Because there's no need to go look at 20, 30 properties. If we're doing our job right, Pat can attest to it, that, you know, we should be able to, within 4 to 6 properties, have you already dialed in, set, know exactly what you're looking for. But what we want to do is make sure that your time that you spend here, we get everything accomplished that we want. So we're actually going to have you talk, if say it's you want to do a mortgage, talk with a lender ahead of time and make sure that we get that pre-approval set up and established before you even come over, because we don't want to go show properties that might be outside of the budget that you're looking at. We're going to make sure that we have an appointment set up with one of the local banks to where you can get a bank account set up. It takes a half hour, 45 minutes, copy of your passport, and they'll set an account up for you. We're going to have an appointment with property managers, but we don't normally do that until after we've figured out what property you're looking at, because we have 2 different type of property managers. One, they call them caretakers. So like the gentleman that Mike was on asking questions, he said, I want to have a house for myself, lock it up and leave it. You still want a caretaker to go over once a month and check the toilets and water and just make sure everything's in good shape. That's a very easy, minimal service. And then you go all the way to the other extreme where you're actually renting the property out on a nightly, weekly basis. You're cleaning everything, you know, when the guests leave, mowing the grass, you know, doing those different things. So, and there are different property managers for different locations around the area. So we won't really set up a choice of property managers to go meet with until we know where you kind of ironed and landed for your properties. The main thing is when you get here, we have a short list of properties. We'll have a timeline. Earlier in your earlier session, Ben said he actually did a mortgage in 17 days. We've actually had someone flew in. Within 4 hours, he was back on a flight again. He was kind of as a stopover trip. And within 4 hours, he had already left. But we had done all the work. My wife had met with him. It was a new construction, went to the builder. The contract was written up. He picked out all of his cabinets and flooring and all that kind of stuff. And literally within 4 hours had him back at Orlando National and was on his way again. So that is a little extreme. I don't recommend doing 4 hours, but if that's what you needed, we could do it. On average is 1 to 3 days is what I would say would be an ample time to get out, look at the area. What's so nice is we've had people who have been coming here 10, 15 years. They know the area. They know it as well as we do. They know where the restaurants are. They know where they will be. So it makes our job so much easier. And it's great when the husband and wife, everybody's all on the same page because we're all going out with a common goal and common interest.
So will you help your clients arrange hotels and car hire, all those sorts of things if they need it? Yeah.
Yes. We've got so many connections even with property managers. So let's say that you're looking and you really are keen on the resort areas. So what we'll do is we'll actually maybe call a property manager we work with, see if they have any homes available in that community. So then you actually get to stay in that community. They'll usually do it at a reduced price. So you'll get to see the clubhouse and the community pool, and you'll get to feel the lifestyle of where you're potentially buying at. And that makes such a difference because you're living the lifestyle that everybody that you want and any potential renter is going to be wanting at the same time. So yes, we are more than happy to help assist with that.
That sounds like the ideal way, really. You get to actually test drive the property you're looking to buy, which
100% is.
yeah, that's a good idea. There's a few questions. I'm just going to fire off some of these while they've come in, so we don't have a huge backlog towards the end of the session. Here's one. Where are the bargains under 100,000 sterling? Start with you, John. Are there any areas where you can get anything within that sort of price range in the sort of Golden Triangle area, you know, the Kissimmee and Davenport areas?
You can. It won't be a single family detached house, because you're looking at right now, that'd be about $130,000, $125,000, $130,000. So it won't be a detached pool home, but you can get some very nice, you know, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condos. They're going to be fully kitted out with furniture, TVs, all that kind of stuff. Usually in a resort type community, so they'll have a clubhouse, community pool. So very, very reasonable, very, very doable to stay under 100,000. I'm sure Pat has something similar that they could probably get into.
Just hold just 1 second, Pat. I just want to. This is linked to your answer. That Alison Roylance White asked, the traditional holiday investment area was Kissimmee. Are there any areas to avoid more now?
To avoid?
To avoid, yeah. She said.
No.
Hopefully, no.
Let me expound on that a little bit, because there are areas that are not legally allowed for doing short-term rental. So
right, that's probably what it hinges on.
It might be, because we have a lot of people who will send us links because they're on, like what Pat was saying, Zillow or different ones, and they're finding beautiful property that has a pool, but it's in East Orlando over by the airport or somewhere. That is not zoned for short-term rental. It's not an area that is legally allowed to do it. So
right.
What we try to do, and you had made mention to it, I think one of the attachments that we had on our website was called the Golden Triangle. It's in that Disney area. It's off of 192. So the closer you get to the theme parks, the better off you are. But we, as realtors, know which areas and which communities are zoned for short-term rental and which ones aren't. But right now, you're still Kissimmee, South Claremont, Davenport, Haines City. Some of Haines City is. Even there's a couple communities in the Orlando area that are zoned for short-term rental. But a matter of fact, we just had one that just opened up over for our Melbourne office over in Melbourne Beach. It's just a little pod, has about 150, maybe 200 properties, and it was grandfathered in for short-term rental. So you're literally right on A1A, right on the beach, and you've got the intercoastal on one side, the ocean on the other side, and you can rent it out nightly just like you do here in Kissimmee. So I don't know very many areas to avoid except the normal ones that are not zoned for the short-term rental area.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, John. And Pat, 100,000 sterling. What can you get in the Sarasota area? If you can get anything.
We do. We don't have a lot, so we won't get any. If I found you a house, a single family home, you wouldn't want to live there. Let's put it that way. But we do have quite a few options as far as condos are concerned. 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, maybe. You won't have a huge amount of choice, but generally speaking, they'll all have at least a community pool. And some of them will allow monthly rentals, not weekly rentals. But I would say 50 to 60% of them won't be allowing rentals. They'll be owner occupied only. But that's fine. If you just want to come over and stay 6 months a year, that would be a nice little place to have.
Okay, thanks very much. And still on price, Pat, if you could just answer this. Mike Grimmett, he's got $400,000 to spend. How much of that would be taken up in fees? So what can he realistically afford in terms of a purchase price when his total spend is $400? What's he going to be paying in all his closing costs?
The good news is here in Florida, our closing costs are much lower than you find around Europe. So I would budget about 2% of that as maximum for your closing costs, Mike. If you're going to buy the house, sometimes because we're in a resort area, you might get a house that's already furnished, so you don't have to budget anything for furnishing the home. Otherwise, to furnish a home here, you know, depending how fussy you are, what kind of style you want, I've had clients who've furnished houses completely for $10,000 to $12,000. I know that's hard to believe, but it just depends. But a lot of times we're finding homes that are fully furnished or at least partially furnished, and that helps you a lot. And then the rest of your money, you would get a very nice 3 or 4 bedroom, 2 or 3 bathroom house with a pool. So you're in a good position.
That's what he wanted to hear, hopefully. Thank you, Pat. Let's move on a bit with the process of buying now. But I will answer Daphne Sharp, who says, who do we contact prior to coming to Florida in order to find a place in Florida? Would this be the realtors in the area? Well, the answer is yes. Hopefully we've answered that, and the ways that Pat and John would help you organise your trip. Okay, Pat, so you've got a client, you've shown them some great properties. They're so good, they found it hard to choose the right one, but they've made a decision. The next thing is, well, I'm assuming they make an offer just like you would in the UK with your guidance. Just talk us through that step and what happens once the offer is accepted.
So basically the first thing we do when we narrow down to a particular house is I do a lot of research. I have a lot of data available to me as a realtor, kind of the back end, if you like, of the MLS system. And I can see what similar homes sold for. I can see photographs of that house a year ago, 2 years ago, so we know how much money people have put into it to upgrade it, for instance. So we come up with pretty much a fair market value for the house. So the house might be listed at $350,000, but I can establish it's really worth $330,000. So there's no point making an offer of 300, right? Because we're way out of the ballpark. But we might make an offer of 320 or 325. And we write that offer up. As I said earlier, we take a contract and we fill in the blanks. And then we present that offer in writing to the seller's agent. And usually when I'm presenting the offer, I'm giving them a little bit of background. So I'm saying, you know, we're offering 325 because this house on the next street sold at 317. This house in the next neighborhood sold at 319. We appreciate you've just put in a new AC and a new roof, whatever the case may be. So I'm presenting not just the offer, but the actual rationale behind the offer, and it's much more likely to be successful. So really what I'm doing is helping the seller's agent convince the seller that this is a good price. But the other thing we do when we write the offer is we protect the buyer. So we include in the offer some contingencies. So for instance, if you are getting a mortgage, you don't want to be locked into the contract if your financing falls through, because then you would lose your deposit. So we would put a contingency in the contract that says, if for whatever reason the buyer cannot get financing, they can cancel the contract and get their deposit back. We also put a contingency in there for home inspections. This is a little bit like your survey in the UK. A licensed inspector comes in and inspects everything in the house, from the roof, the electrical, the plumbing, everything you ever wanted to know about the home, he's inspecting. If he finds something that needs to be repaired, something you're not happy with, depending on the kind of contract we have, we could either make the contract cancelable if for any reason the buyer is not happy, or we can hold the seller liable to make repairs up to a certain repair limit. So that home inspection phase and that contingency in the contract is very important. We get a lot of cash buyers in our area too. So a cash buyer is always afraid of overpaying. So we might put an appraisal contingency in there where we get a professional appraiser to come up with a report, which actually is the same value that John and I would come up with, and say, you know, this house is worth X. And if we've offered more than that, then, you know, we're going to take the offer back to what the appraised value is. So the other thing we do when we're writing an offer, I try to make it as attractive to the sellers as possible. This is important in an area or a market like we have now, where we're seeing multiple offers sometimes. So I will always call the seller's agent and I'll say, what's important to the seller? I mean, price is always important, right? But maybe they want a long closing. Maybe they want 90 days. We usually close in 30 to 45 days, but maybe this particular seller needs a little bit more time to get out of the house. So if we're happy with a longer closing, I present that as part of the offer and sweeten the pot a little bit that way.
Great, thank you very much. So you're very busy then once your client makes an offer.
That's when the work starts,
That's
right?
when the work starts. That's the phrase I was looking for. So assuming the offer's accepted and you get to the closing stage of the process, the contract and closing stage, John, just talk us through that bit and where does closing happen? Because the other thing is, we've talked about how much you guys do in the process. Do most clients employ an independent attorney as well, as you call them, a lawyer? And are they involved in the closing process as well? Because you have other things called closing agents as well. So these are all foreign things to UK buyers. Just tell us about those.
There's a lot in that right there, and 100% yes. A buyer or anybody can hire an attorney to review a contract if they want. But as Pat stated, we use what's called a standard FAR bar, which is Florida Association of Realtors, and the Bar Association got together, drew up a standardized contract. It's 11 pages long. And what we do as realtors is we actually fill in the blank. It's the terms and conditions. Who is the buyer? Who is the seller? What's the property address? What are the terms and conditions? Any inspections, sale of personal property, all kinds of different things. So we're not acting as an attorney. The good thing is the seller has to hire either an attorney or a title agency, a title company, to handle the legal side of this transaction. So what's nice is the seller is obligated to do this, and they're also obligated to issue at closing clear title. With that comes title insurance. So it basically means that from the date of closing backwards, if there was anything ever attached to the property, any lien, any cloud, any issue would all go back to the title insurance company and not to the new buyer. So they know from the date of closing forward, they have that house and there won't be any liens against it. To go back a little bit, we've got a contract. There's actually two contracts. One is an as-is contract. That means, and Pat said it, we really do try to offer a clean contract to the seller. So they're more attracted to our offer than maybe the 2 or 3 other offers that have come in. An as-is contract means that the buyer actually has the right to do an inspection survey, look at the property, have 10 or 15 days to get this done. And if they find for any reason, because it actually says this, the buyer, if for any reason, I don't like that blue wall, whatever, I can actually cancel the contract, give written notice, and receive my escrow, which is my good faith deposit. That's what actually makes it binding. They have a seller, you have a buyer, you've got an agreement in principle. The buyer offers a good faith deposit to the title company, they hold it, and then all the timelines start. If there was an issue that was found, then we'd have to go back and renegotiate. The other contract that you can do is what's called a repair contract. A repair contract says to the seller, if there's any issues found, you're going to be responsible for fixing up to maybe $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. There's a lot of open-ended. We don't use a lot of repair contracts because what we're going to do is negotiate the best price possible. Anything that is cosmetic or anything like that, we'll take care of after closing, but we want to negotiate the best price up front for the buyer. Plus the seller looks at it and says, I'm not going to be on the hook for anything else. Now, hypothetically, there could be something in the roof that, maybe it's 20 years old. I saw someone asked a question there, how are new properties compared to 10 or 20-year-old properties? We're concrete block construction. There's not a lot of issues with those. It's a block, concrete is concrete. What we do have is sometimes called deferred maintenance, where people might not paint the house as often as they should or whatever. That's easy. We hire a painter, they'll come in for $2,000, $3,000, they'll paint the property, and it's good for another 5 to 7 years. So if I'm looking at it, I go to contract, we do our inspection, we have our financing contingency, we have our appraisal contingency. While all of that is happening, the title company behind the scenes is doing all the legal work. They're doing the title searches, they're making sure there was no open permit still left on the property. They're handling all of the legal side of it. The lender's working on getting the mortgage sorted out. If there are any issues that pop up during that home inspection or survey, that actually does give us a chance, even though it's as is. If it was something serious that was hidden up in the roof or something, we couldn't see it, we actually can go back to the seller and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you know, we've done our inspection. There's $1,000 worth of repairs needed to be done. Would you negotiate with us? And we need to get that either addressed now, y'all take care of it, or issue a credit, let the buyer take care of it after closing, then the warranty stays with the buyer. So whatever issue pops up, we can definitely take care of that. So you've gone all the way through there. The title work is being done. You're getting close to closing. Funds actually need to be wired. So what I would recommend doing, instead of sending money straight out from your bank, I would actually get with the currency. Matter of fact, you've got a currency exchange company on site there. I would actually get a hold of them and say, I think you can get us a better exchange rate than my bank can. And typically that's what happens. So what they'll do is they'll transfer money to the currency exchange company. Currency exchange company will wire it back over to the title company for closing. We're going to do a final walkthrough. Pat will say, you know, you might have already gone back to the UK. We're going to go do a final walkthrough and just make sure that the seller has left the house. All the furniture's there that we negotiated. Everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. We'll actually do a walkthrough video. We do that quite often. We'll go on FaceTime and just walk around the house and show you everything that's there. And then you'll be ready for completion or closing. That can either be done here. If you need another excuse to come back to Florida, come on back and you can actually sign right here, or we can do it remotely while you're in the UK. The title company will actually help facilitate that for you. So there's a lot of steps from start to finish, but you're kind of protected all the way through. You've got someone looking out for you.
Right, a very comprehensive answer. Thank you, John. You just kind of answered the question here from Jacinta O'Reilly. If you go out on a viewing trip, so you're looking for your property and then you return to the UK, I mean, can all this happen while you're back in the UK? This is what you guys will be doing. And you also just said you don't have to come back for the closing either.
Richard, we have people who buy sight unseen. We'll go through on either WhatsApp or FaceTime. We'll go through and literally show different properties. They like the property, they'll have an inspection done. So then they have a third party come out and do a physical inspection on the property, make sure it's good. They'll put a home warranty on the property, which will cover all the appliances and white goods and air conditioning. So it's covered for a year after closing. We have people have not even seen the house. They'll come out 6 or 7 months later and wow, this is beautiful. It looks better than I even imagined. So yes, it can be done without them having to be here.
And as you mentioned earlier, most people will have appointed a property key holding management firm, so they'll have a key in their absence, and they know that someone is available all the time to go and check it or do their regular checks in your absence anyway. So it can be completely hands off if you want it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Conscious of the time, we've had a question about new build. Pat, Doris Henderson, new properties have a certificate for a number of years. I'm guessing that's like a 10-year guarantee or what building warranty, like we do, well, in Europe, not just the UK. Does this exist in America? What sort of insurance do you have when you buy a new property?
Absolutely. With the new property from a builder, you will get the builder's own warranty, which is underwritten by an insurance company. They do vary a little bit. Some builders will offer you 1 or 2 years warranty on everything, and then 5 or 10 years structural warranty on the main systems and the structure of the house. But that's included in the purchase price of the house. The other thing that happens is when the builders complete construction, they need to get a certificate of occupancy from the local county. So when the house got planning permission, the plans were filed with the local county. Periodically during construction, the inspectors are inspecting different phases of the house before they can move on to the next phase of construction. And before the house can be occupied, it needs a final sign-off. So that sign-off is really an added level of protection for the buyer to say everything is good, everything is structurally sound, but things happen, hence the reason for the 10-year warranty.
And on topic, do you sell many properties off plan? So, you know, pre-build stage, does that happen much?
We do. First of all, most of our new builds are going on in homeowner association or deed restricted subdivisions. So there's usually 1, 2, or 3 or 4 builders in there, all building. So everything is planned out. And so people aren't buying plots of land and sitting on them for 10 years. So you know when you buy something, the neighborhood's going to be finished in a couple of years, for instance.
Yeah.
But right now, demand in our market is so high, we have very little inventory. Even those builders who build homes for inventory to sell to those people who want immediate occupancy, that's very, very low. So I just wrote a contract last week with a local client, and they really want to be in this new community. There's nothing for sale that's partially built. They're having to wait 9 months for a new house to be built. 2 weeks ago, I sold a house in a golf club community that is 2 months from completion. So we could walk through the house, you know, it needs a little bit of work, but you could see it and feel it. So it just depends on where you're buying and what you're buying. But yeah, absolutely, we sell off plan. The risk associated with buying something off plan in Florida is very, very low. We don't have, touch wood, any of the horror stories you hear around Europe where you buy something, or in the Caribbean, you buy something and the developer disappears. Again, very consumer protected market.
Yeah.
So things are legislated, contractually, everything is controlled. I've never heard of anything like that happening in our state. And so I'm not anticipating it coming up.
Great. And what would be a typical payment scheme for out there? I mean, you pay a deposit and then various stage payments at different points in the construction process.
Yeah, if you're buying from a builder, usually the builder will want anywhere between 10 and 25% deposit up front. 15% is about average in our market. And then you don't pay anything until the building's complete. If you are buying a plot of land and building your own house and contracting directly with the builder on a one-off basis, then he's going to want staged payments. So he'll want maybe 10% up front, 15% more when they pour the foundations, 20% more when the walls and the roof are on, and that's called phased payments. And we can arrange construction loans that tally along with those phased payments, and then at the end of the construction period, convert to a regular mortgage. So we've got a whole host of financing tools that we can put in place as well.
Great, thank you. We are just about out of time, but John, can you give us a 30-second, 1-minute overview quickly of new build in the Orlando area at the moment? Is there much happening? Is there a lot of choice, a lot of stock?
There is quite a bit. Stock inventory, stuff that's already done, not as much, but as Pat said, we've got a great scheme here that basically they protect the buyer. So we've got a lot of people who have contracted, 5-6 months ago, and they're getting ready to close and be able to move into the house. So we have a lot of good inventory, a lot of resort communities with a lot of amenities that do well with rentals. We partner with the different management companies to make sure that we kit them out the right way to make sure they achieve the highest income possible. So we have a great staff of people that we work with. So if there's any questions about that, please let us know.
Brilliant, very concise. Thank you. We really are out of time, but John and Pat are both available to speak to via a further Zoom appointment. If you go to the Place in the Sun digital website, you'll find their listing page on there under the exhibitor section, and you feel free to contact them that way. We've dealt with most of the questions, which is good. So thank you, Pat. Thank you, John. I know we're going to be seeing you again in the next couple of sessions, both of you at various points. So don't go away if you want to hear more from Pat and John. Next, we're looking at a couple of 3 different property options in Florida, which starts at 3:30. And then there'll be a session on currency. We've talked about currency a bit, especially important if you're buying off plan as well, because obviously you need to think about your future payments and what the exchange rate might happen and ways you can mitigate that. And then we're doing a final session on owning your property and letting. So the things you need to think about once you've bought your property, that's 4 to 4:45. So don't go away. There's more to come. Thank you for listening, and thanks, Pat and John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
See you later.